Good leaders recognize and reward success, which not only gives people a sense of accomplishment, but it also makes them feel like they belong to an organization that cares about them. When all this is done, the work itself becomes intrinsically motivating. I start you all off with this quote from Harvard Business Review's book on leadership. It's important for me to discuss the following because it sets the tone, or it creates that culture that just doesn't provide any response from the people you work with, or doesn't get any buy-in. So let's look at a fundamental, basic emotional response that comes from the name of a person. Now, according to Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, in that book he discusses how people enjoy the sound of their own name because of the value it has for them. And I agree with that. And I'm going to add on to that a person's name is a valuable sound to them because of what it encompasses, what it all holds. All of our accomplishments, all of our doings, all of our tears, all of our failures that we turn around and make into successes, all of those are put into our name. Anytime anyone hears our name, they remember the good times. They remember any memory that we hold with them. Anytime we hear our own name, we are reminded of how valuable we are, the esteem that we carry with it. Now, where am I going with this? I'm talking about building intrinsic motivation and how if we do not establish a good relationship right at the beginning of meeting someone that we're going to work with for a long period of time, then we're setting ourselves up for a long road of many disagreements because of lack of buy-in. Or we're going to set ourselves up on a paved road that's everything's going to run smooth. Now, in an ideal world, everything should run smooth regardless of the situation. But through human nature, we hold value in things and we respond by feeling that sense of belonging. If we work in a place where new management walks in and having spent some time with management, we introduce ourselves. We get to know the management. We get to know the management teams, the leadership. We get to understand who they are. We recognize them because they're the ones always at the top and they always have the spotlight because we're always looking towards them. But whenever that leadership comes around and doesn't reciprocate that same type of excitement that we show them, then they are letting it be known that there is no value. There is no value in the work that's being done, and there is no value in the person that's working for them. Let me give you an example of how this looks. Take employee A, who's been working with leadership for the past month. And employee A knows the leadership, knows their name, like I mentioned before, and understands who they are because the leadership has introduced themselves. And at the time the leadership's been there, let's give them a month, the employee and the leadership have had interactions about 4 times, introduced themselves to the leadership. But one day when leadership comes by, instead of asking the employee, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. I know we've met before. They are greeted with, hey, you're employee B, right? With that uncertain look in their eye. Take a moment to let that settle in. How would you respond to the people who you look towards being of value? Because at the end of the day, we put value in our leadership because we believe in what they're offering. We believe in the vision that they want us to achieve together that they don't even recognize the name. They haven't taken the time to recognize the name. And even if they don't remember the name, they haven't even taken the time to address a great way to make sure that that employee A will not feel any sense of undervalue emotion. Remember, we're creating intrinsic motivation here. How intrinsically motivated will employee A be from that moment? Now, I know some of the listeners might be, well, that's not a crushing moment, and that employee A should develop that resilience. And that is true. There needs to be more emotional intelligence developed from that employee. And I've said this before in previous episodes, that if employee A wants a certain leadership, then the employee A needs to become that leadership within themselves. So whenever moments like that arise, they can maybe either coach or understand why it's happening in the first place. But I digress, so we're going to come back to the original point. We're creating intrinsic motivation here. And now having the employee understand that leadership has not taken the time to get to know my name, and I'm saying my as if I'm the employee, that's going to weigh on me even for a split second and let me understand the transparency that just occurred, that I am not of value. I am not added value here. My name that represents who I am, what I've accomplished, has no meaning to you, the leadership. Now remember, in the quote I originally read to you all at the beginning of all this, says, good leaders recognize and reward success. Okay, so nothing here was being rewarded, which not only gives people a sense of accomplishment, but that makes them feel like they belong to an organization that cares about them. Well, let's turn it around there. Good leaders recognize and reward success. There was no success in that leadership. So the employee, how can the employee provide any reward to that leadership? The leadership has just shown that employee that there is no care because there has been no attempt to remember the name. Now, I want you all to understand this, that this is not about it's only the employee who should be innocent of all this and the leadership is poor. No. What I'm trying just to convey out there is that when you have good leadership, they know how to approach employees. When you have leadership that has flaws in it, it's important for that leadership to be able to do that reflection, like I've mentioned in previous episodes. Go back and have that empathy and have that emotional intelligence to understand how not remembering someone's name can be a hurdle that they create. Now, it may not be one that the leadership has to jump over, but nevertheless, it's no longer a smooth paved road. And so I leave everyone tonight with the understanding that when you introduce yourself to someone, always put forth your hand, give that firm handshake, that look in the eye, your name nice and proud, so that it could be said. And if you're that leadership, always make that effort to remember that employee's name so that that employee can feel validation of their name and value added to the company or organization. And in the next meeting, when you run into this leadership, you remind the leadership. Remember, you want to be that leader. You want to be under a leadership that remembers name, then you be that leader that remembers their name. And you always address them by their name every time you see them. And recognize them. Because remember, the most precious thing that anyone can hear is the sound of their own name. Be that change that you want to see in the world. I believe Gandhi said that. So become that leader. And if you're that leadership, make full effort to always remember that person's name. And if you can't remember, be kind in how you address that you don't remember their name. Be strategic in your wording. And what I mean by strategic, be able to empathize with that person and how they would feel by not having their name remembered and how valuable that sound is to them. And choose your words carefully and be authentic. Because when you establish that, how do you establish that? And this will be the last part I talk about. When you establish that you do not remember their name in a kind, sincere manner, there's a lot of value added in that conversation that your employee A, who we go back to, will recognize the authentic part in you, that you're a human that will forget that you have flaws and will be understanding of why you don't recognize their name at that moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave you that. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I will be putting on a new episode here in the next couple of days. If you like what you hear, please go ahead and share it, like it, subscribe, and you'll be hearing from me soon.